Hello, my name is Michael Frank, Assistant City Manager for the City of Santa Rosa. This is the second of a two-part video blog on Measure O and the city's fiscal crisis and budget problems and how all of those intersect with one another. In the first part of this segment, I spoke about how Measure O is allocated and what it's to be used for. I also touched on the concept of supplanting, and the writers of the ordinance made it very, very difficult for any reductions to occur in any of the areas covered by Measure O, because what they wanted to do was to ensure that if new money was coming in for these purposes, that the city would be spending more money overall for these purposes. And that has worked fine for the last 4 years. As you've hopefully read or heard in previous video blogs, the city has major budget problems, significant budget challenges, and a structural deficit. Approximately 20 to 25 million is what we're looking at with regard to this deficit. In a previous video blog, I also showed you that public safety makes up 64% of the city's resources. So it's very difficult to solve a budget problem of the scale that we have now in the city without touching police and fire. We've tried to do that. We've made significant reductions in other areas, and we're now at a point where it becomes very difficult to make the scale of the types of reductions we're talking about without touching police and fire at all. Measure O foresaw a situation like we're in now, a budget situation. And what the ordinance states is the City Council can make a finding of fiscal crisis. And if they do that, and it's not easy to do that because 6 out of the 7 members of the City Council need to make that finding. But if they do, at that point, the city is allowed to what we're calling supplant Measure O funds. Now, I want to be clear. The money that comes in from the sales tax, the Measure O funds, must still be used for the purposes outlined in the ordinance. So the money can still only be used for police, fire, and gang prevention and intervention. But what it means is that on the general fund side, the city is allowed to make reductions in police and fire, in the police and fire departments. So that's the connection with the fiscal crisis and why it's so important at this point in time. If council does not declare a fiscal crisis or have a finding of fiscal crisis, then it is virtually impossible for the city to make additional reductions in the police and fire departments. And given the $20 million deficit that needs to be dealt with, it is extremely difficult to take all of that out of our Recreation and Parks Department and our Streets Department. There just isn't enough there to come up with those types of dollars. So with that, I think that covers the connection. The only other piece is that in the police department, they have some fund balance in the Measure O. We separate all those funds, and there's fund balance there. And in order to use that money to help us with the budget problems and to keep police officers on the street, we must also declare that fiscal crisis and have 6 out of the 7 council members declare that fiscal crisis. So hopefully that answers your questions about Measure O and the fiscal crisis. Again, additional information is located on the city's website at srcity.org. Thank you.